Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having us here. My co-presenter is Dr. Jianwan Choi, who is with me, and many thanks to the rest of the team who cannot join us today. And thanks, a million thanks actually to them. You're the best. Okay, today's agenda. I'm going to present some results of a product development effort, which lasts for over 4 years now and is still ongoing. These materials have never been shared outside stream methods. We're going to introduce the concept of flood impacting threshold we call FIT. We're going to introduce some applications of the concept, including FIT scores and precision rating. Then we're going to share some project experience and lessons learned. And then my job will be done. If you have any difficult questions, aim them at Dr. Choi. And again, a million thanks to all the other team members who cannot join us today. An abstract of this presentation is available on our website, which is www.streammethods.com. Two extra points I would like to make before we dive. The first is that this is totally independent work, not funded by FEMA. We got asked repeatedly over the years whether we're part of the Rating 2.0 initiative. No, we're not. To this point, we know little about Rating 2.0. We're glad to hear that some of the thinking between the two are quite similar. Approaches may be different, but some of the conclusions are similar. This is very encouraging for us. At the same time, if anything is wrong, do not blame Andy. Secondly, do not be too much agitated by the acronyms we use. We have to admit we're pretty bad at that, and they may change in the future too. All right. Some background. What you're going to hear is an internal project codenamed Project Everest Mariana, designed to differentiate risk anywhere on the globe between the highest point and the known lowest point of the Earth. The challenge is obviously how, in a simple way, to differentiate flood risk, which exists anywhere, not just in the certain zones or in the certain available maps. As the project proceeded, excuse me, we sought ways to address some common but fundamental questions similar to those listed in the slide. Why do I have to buy flood insurance, but my next door neighbor 10 feet away does not? Why do I have to pay $100 more than the guy across the street? Which flooding events would affect me? But more importantly to us, which events or frequencies would not affect me? The FIT concept is good at answering these questions, especially what's not affecting me. For example, if your building sits on the 100-year floodplain boundary, 99 years out of that 100 will not affect you. Your risk rating should reflect that accordingly. It all boils down to how to differentiate risk building to building precisely and consistently. This is the fundamental challenge. And of course, we have been searching nonstop for a good flood risk score, which for me is a 14-year search. I think we're close to get one, but not sure we actually have the one. Regardless, we'll continue the search. I will go quickly on the FIT concept. Flood impacting threshold, FIT, is a threshold event that marks zero flood impact. You may ask, what is your definition of zero impact? Well, for example, zero zero depth or zero damage, for instance. There are various types of impact depending on what your purpose is. We could get more into that, but today's focus is just one type, a physical property of the location or the building. In layman's words, FIT event is just when the water arrives at the foot of your building, but has not yet entered the building, not yet caused any inundation, not yet damaged anything yet. It is a physical property of the structure, independent or less independent of human judgment. In its essence, if your building's elevation is high, your FIT is high. If elevation is low, the threshold is low. This is common sense, and the formula on the screen says just that. WSEL, water surface elevation, STREL, structure elevation. So I think everybody knows this. We think FIT is a beautiful concept because mathematically, zero is beautiful. There is only one zero out there. There is no confusion, and you have a better chance finding a precise way to describe it. It is singular. You do not need two numbers to describe it. For example, BFE alone is not sufficient enough to describe flood risk. One has to combine it with in and out determination, floor elevation, or depth. But FIT alone is enough. We think FIT is significant and critical for rating. A FIT event is the lower boundary under the rating curve, and I'm going to show you that later. How significant, even dramatic effect this FIT event has over the rating. Most importantly, FIT concept is intelligible. It is simple enough to understand, even for kids, literally. I have been overly enthusiastic about this concept, and wherever and whenever I have a chance, I talk to people, even to a 13-year-old. You know what she said to me? She said that I'm quixotic, but intelligible. Well, that's really encouraging. Again, FIT is in line with common sense, and it is simple and effective for communicating risk rating. We'll talk more in the later slides. FIT is a nice concept. So what? What can we do with it? Here is the application number one, FIT scores. FIT score, because we can precisely and consistently model FIT events, we can generate new insights. FIT scores are just model outputs, characteristics, conditions, analytics, and derivatives of a FIT event. For a location or a building, we just use all those for risk scoring purpose. Here are some examples of FIT scores we developed. FIT elevation is our effort trying to not replace, but find an alternative to BFE. It is a zero depth event, progressively exists anywhere on Earth, not just, a 100-year base elevation. FIT AEP and FIT return period are just model the characteristics of the FIT events for that building, shown on screen. We can further create derivatives. For example, we can group them together and color code them for various purposes. The FIT score M is just a result after we apply a multiplier to make it more intelligible. People always prefers integers than decimals, so that's just make it better accepted. InstaScore is a color-coded indicator created by grouping FIT scale in certain ways so that the risk can be described as red, orange, green, or whatever. Excuse me. As you can probably tell, we try to emulate FICC scores for flood scoring purpose. One beauty of FIT scores is that it is precise, sensitive, and continuous. It is continuous like the color scale on screen indicates. It represents the continuous nature of flood risk from a 100% chance to a 0% chance. It is sensitive from building to building, even if the difference in water surface elevation is just a tiny, let's say, 1/1000th of an inch. Theoretically, your FIT score can still catch that. So mathematically, it is sound and sensitive. If you follow NFIP standards and guidelines to model and map flood risk, you can take advantage this sensitivity. I'm talking about hydrodynamic models here. If you are using other model methodologies, they may not have the same level of precision and sensitivity, but the FIT scores may still be good. If you would like to see some of these FIT scores on demand in action, let us know. Part of the purpose of flood score is to prepare risk scoring, building to building, location to location. This slide is just one example using FIT scores to compare risk from house to house in the neighborhood. You can also compare a house in Delaware with one in Denver. If Delaware's score is higher, then the risk is higher than the Denver one. By the way, again, this is our independent work, not FEMA's rating 2.0. If you hear anything wrong, don't blame Andy. So this FIT concept is simple and powerful, we believe. How do you model FIT scores consistently, globally, and precisely? We can only touch the surface for this subject in this session. Long story short, in order to model FIT scores, you need the following. You need a high-grade model methodology, like NFIPs, so that you can create high-grade models and maps in order to model FIT scores. Preferably at the moment, we choose hydrodynamic models, which offer the highest grade sensitivity. You also need high resolution inputs, your base layers, especially, building footprints, terrain elevations, and structure elevation. The higher the resolution, the better. LiDAR, for example, gives the best results. You need water surface elevations of multiple frequencies. As a matter of fact, all frequencies, if you can get, not just a few. This is a huge challenge, not for everyone's appetite. We modeled 1,000 frequencies for a given location in Louisiana, which you will see later, at literally 1/10 of an inch interval. There was no easy way doing this. Some people might think, they would just develop some automation tools, map out a few frequencies, and then, interpolate or extrapolate. No, that wouldn't work. It won't work. We tried that. The heavy lifting is a must. Structure elevation is probably the hardest to get. It has the result for structure elevation has to reach a certain level of accuracy to allow accurately modeling FIT scores so that you can differentiate risk from house to house. For us, it is the biggest single challenge, a big torture actually, but it may be one of the most rewarding too, if it can eliminate the 40-year pain of elevation certificate. This slide illustrates the modeling all water surfaces in order to model FIT. It's also showing that we modeled all types of structures too. To us, placing sandbags around a ventilation opening of subway tunnel is raising FIT elevation by blocking or delaying water entering the tunnel. We also have another acronym for you, WET, W-E-T, stands for water entering threshold. It is a subtype of FIT, but we chose that as just, it seems some people prefers WET than FIT. All right. Okay. Oh, this is something fun to watch. In order to model flood impact threshold, we need to model and map all frequencies so that we can have the water surface elevations, all of them. This 3D visual shows 1,000 water surface modeled and how FIT is determined progressively. Hopefully the video shows up correctly. Let's say on the screen you see we want to determine the FIT for the building on the left of the picture. So a flood event reaches far away from the house. The water continues to rise more and more and getting closer and closer, rises more until the water reaches the foot of the building, let's say here. Okay. Assume you think the impacting point is when water entering the building through the door, then FIT needs to be at the door, not at this point showing on the screen. So the water keeps rising and reach the bottom of the door. If you know the elevation of the structure, as well as all the frequencies, the water surface elevations you just see, you can determine FIT. On the right, there are two maps. They're just a band of floodplain boundaries, how they look like from the above. Every year of return, every inch of water surface has a line on the maps. Some people might say, you know, the water starts affecting a building 15 feet away from the building. FIT would be different if you use a different definition of the impact, which we talked briefly earlier. Application number 2, precision rating. Some insurance professionals said to me after we introduced the precision rating concept, there is no precision in rating, and they have a point. So I think it is better to say that precision rating is a new tool for the professionals like Andy to set the rates better. Here's the concept. It's simple. Full and precise risk is the area under the rating curve and bounded by a lower threshold and an upper threshold. This is just the AAL rating model. In order to rate flood risk, we need a lower boundary, say the zero depth or zero damage event like FIT. Then we also need what we call flood impacting ceiling threshold, an upper boundary, often arbitrarily set at 6 meters. We set that. Most of the rating curves we use stops there, but some insurance professionals told me they do not use that 19.6 roughly feet as the upper bound. They consider maximum damage is reached when the building is inundated by 3 meters of water. half of what we use there. So at the end, we decided to make it flexible. So you pick whatever your preferred upper boundary. In the curve at the lower right top corner of the site on that graphic, under the curve, the left boundary is the FIT threshold. Flooding events further to the left from this lower bound do not and should not affect the rating. The FIT boundary cuts off at the part, cuts off that part, the left of the lower boundary, from effective rating area. The better you set the lower boundary, the more accurate the rating is. This is a critical point because the head of the diagram carries more weight than the tail. A small difference in FIT boundary could result in a dramatic change in rating. So precision rating is dependent on the lower boundary and then upper boundary, but it's usually more sensitive to the lower boundary, the FIT event. This is an interesting chart showing the relationship between the two boundaries we just reviewed. The model is for one building affixed to a real location somewhere in Louisiana. When the structure elevation is the same as ground level, the associated FIT return period is about 60 years, I think. And the upper bound FIT is about 100 years. Imagine that you continuously elevate the building to mitigate flood risk. Moving toward the right, both the lower and upper bounds are rising, and the gap between the two narrows down relatively quickly when you elevate less than can you give me 1 second? Less than 4 feet. After that point, the gap remains relatively constant. Does this mean that a sweet spot of elevating for mitigation exists? One way to lower risk is to reduce the gap between the two boundaries. The other, of course, is to move both the boundaries towards the tail part. I would probably pay a minimum 4 feet because more doesn't narrow the gap much. Then if I have extra money, I will raise the building as much as I could. This is just nice to know. Okay, before we move on further, a quick summary. FIT events are critical for precision rating, which is full and precise rating of flood risk. While both the lower and upper boundaries are critical, FIT usually carries more weight than the upper boundary, and as a result, precision rating is more sensitive to FIT. This is because the head under the curve on the left part carries more than the tail, but not always. If you are far away from a flooding source and way above where the water can rise to, your probability of being flooded is very low, then your upper boundary probably carries more weight than FIT. But for what we do, say we only concern, let's say 1,000 year event, then usually FIT carries more weight. Rather than describing FIT and precision rating from a purely theoretical perspective, I'd like to show you some data so that you can get a feel of them. Over the years, we have multiple rating engines developed for various rating methods. One of them is AAL 500, which is just the AAL method considering no greater than 500-year event. It just cuts off at 500 years. We calculated AAL 500 rates for all buildings in Louisiana based on our own flood maps. There were totally about 2 million buildings in Louisiana in our database. We pull a subset then of the buildings residing within our 500-year floodplains. Then we run precision rating with precise lower and upper bound on the subset of buildings so that we can compare AAL 500 rates and precision rates. We try to prove our hypothesis regarding precision rating and FIT on the massive scale, and also try to figure out what it means, to homeowners and communities from a more practical perspective. Here are some of the findings. At the individual building level, the blue line on screen represents the AAL 500 rates based on fixed frequencies. The orange lines are precision rates based on FIT. For this building, the blue line is always above the orange, indicating the AAL 500 rates are always higher than precision rates. If I remember right, it is about 14% or so over. The diagram on the left also considers the flood elevation for the scenario such as what if my house is elevated? Well, it will lower your rates for sure, but AAL 500 rates will be still higher than what it should be. This is the case at the individual building level. If we do this comparison for the entire state, what would it look like? Here it is. This is the data distribution of this large-scale analysis for the state of Louisiana. For more than 500,000 buildings, the difference between AAL 500 and precision rates are 40% or less using AAL 500 rates as the base. We could say, we may say they're similar, no big deal, but for more than 450,000 buildings, the difference is big, more than 120%. And some are dramatically different. You can tell from the charts. By the way, again, these numbers are not rating 2.0. They are our rating methods. This slide shows the same as the previous slide, just a slightly different way of calculating. Excuse me. Roughly speaking, prices for the state, at least for the state of Louisiana, prices half over, half under, roughly, right? But what does this mean to the communities? What does it mean? Here is a state map. The orange bar height represents the difference between the AAL 500 rates and precision rates. It is probably too hard to discern any a good, obvious spatial distribution pattern here, but probably the southeastern communities would enjoy a bigger drop in premium if precision rate is used. Precision rating represents the full and precise flood risk. As a result, we can tell precisely whether a price point is under or overpriced. In 2017, I shared with Andy and Joe the above diagram, which we developed just to analyze where underpricing usually occurs and where overpricing usually occurs. Comparing various rating methods with precision rating, we have identified some spatial patterns regarding that. Before FIT and precision rating, it was hard, at least for us, to define what is under, what is over. and where is underpriced, where is overpriced. But now we can definitively, because we know what the right price is. With FIT and precision rating, now we can precisely address the guy across the street problem. Even the difference is only a fraction of 1 cent. We can still catch that tiny difference if we choose to. We didn't, by the way. The beauty of FIT and precision rating is that you can apply them in any zones or no zone at all. For this neighborhood, for example, the 100-year zone is on the right in light blue, and the 500-year zone is in light orange, hard to see on screen. For this neighborhood, if you move from right to left, beyond the two zones, rates get smaller and smaller, right? And to the point that $1 shown on the left of the picture. But flood risk still exists at this point, right? This lays out the foundation for what we call a fair law. It's just a crazy thought. On the lower right is a tweet I did in 2017. You got to read it on your own. Maybe someday such a law would require anybody to buy flood insurance. Somebody would pay $1 million a year. Somebody would just pay 1 cent. Again, it's just a crazy idea. Very quickly, mitigation modeler. This slide just shows the effect of raising FIT for structure and how much savings the action would bring. This just shows that if you raise your structure half a foot, you save about 5%, and if you raise 8 feet, you would probably save about 60%. And we modeled various types of buildings and various ways of raising FIT, even placing sandbags. It's fun to model various scenarios like these on screen. Anyway, this is fun. You think you have elevated the building enough, right? Think again. It may not be enough. We modeled the real event of August 2016, the Baton Rouge flooding. We reconstructed the hydrodynamic models of this historic event. Above the two shown on the screen are our purple water models showing the entire neighborhood was inundated by the roof. And the two pictures below is what actually happened. So it's when we saw that, we said to ourselves, maybe our model may not be that crazy, may not be that great. To summarize what we have, we just described, FIT best reflects the progressive nature of flooding water and flood risk. It breaks out from the in and out paradigm. Rather than saying you're in a certain zone, we say you're on the line. For example, one house can be on the line of 72.5 year. The other is on the 82.4 year. It is we think it is a great leap forward for depicting flood risk, and it can be applied universally. FIT scores precisely differentiate flood risk building to building with great sensitivity and comparability. And precision rating is an application of FIT concept. It rates flood risk precisely and fully. FIT is a critical factor for precision rating, resulting in significantly, even dramatically different rates. To us, the beauty of both FIT and precision rating is their simpleness. They are great communication tools too. They're simple and yet powerful. To model fit and precision rating, you need massive data, models, and maps. It is an awesome capability to have. Two critical factors are water surface elevation and structure elevation. For water surface elevation, no need to create any new standards or guidelines. You can just follow the NFIP if you choose to. For structure elevation, the most torturing factor here, I'm glad to say we nailed it too. Again, this presentation is not FEMA's rating 2.0. If something's wrong, do not blame Andy, and stay tuned. We will share any advancements in the future. With that, I close today's presentation. Thanks again for everyone. You can contact us at any time. Thank you.